Hello, welcome to a STEM club type video, a STEM club activity video, where we're going to take a set of cheap, they're actually £1 from one of those pound shops, set of LED lights, Christmas lights, which if I turn them on will drown things out, but they do work. Okay, the Christmas trees come off and you can see the LEDs. And a nice activity to do with students is to modify this very simply with a different kind of LED. If you notice here, I've changed the white LEDs to a colour changing LED. And you get some nice effects. They go fast, slow, and fade and flash. So one of the things we're going to do, or the thing we're going to do, is we're going to see about modifying those to change all of the LEDs, all of the Christmas tree LEDs, to these colour changing LEDs. So they come apart quite simply. The Christmas trees come off and you'll see that there's actually some form of heat shrink compound, a little plastic tube around each of the LEDs, and that can be removed. Be quite careful, but it can be removed with a pair of snips, and we can snip up the middle and we can keep on peeling away. Careful not to cut the wires. And notice that the LEDs are attached in parallel. So each of these LEDs is across the two batteries, the 3 volts. And that makes them quite simple to rewire. So I'm going to nibble all the way up here if I can with my snips and keep on pulling the heat shrink compound apart. What I'll get to eventually is I'll get to the very top where the LED is, and then I can just carefully clip and begin to nibble this off the LED, and once it's cut off all the way, you'll find that the heat shrink sleeving will just peel off completely, and that can be discarded. We are going to replace it with some fresh. That can be discarded. But then you'll notice that between the legs of the LEDs, there is a plastic spacer with a ridge down it. We're going to put that plastic spacer back when we've finished, but the purpose of the plastic spacer is to stop the legs touching and shorting out. So we're going to go back to that in a mo. What we need to work out is which of the LED legs here now is positive and negative. Now we can do that by inspection, or actually we can just get one of these 3 volt lithium cells. What is it? A CR2032, and put the positive and the negative. Positive is the flat side, the negative is this recessed side. We push it between the batteries, they'll light. Put it in the wrong way round, it won't light. Put it in the right way round, it will. So the top face here was positive, so I know that this top leg here now is the positive leg of this LED. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the 2 wires here, 2 wires because they're in parallel. I'm going to mark the 2 wires with my Sharpie, so I know that both of those 2 wires are the positive wires for this LED. So now what I need to do is I need to remove this LED from those 2 wires. So I'm going to bring in my soldering iron, and I'm just going to hold it, and if I just run the soldering iron very quickly over the solder joint, what will happen is the solder will melt and I'm able to remove the LED. So now I've got my 2 positive wires and my 2 negative wires, and an LED which actually, if I bring back in the battery and put it in, is still functional, and I can use this LED for some other project. And I'm now going to bring in a new LED, which is a flashing LED. Put that in and you'll see it flashes. So the top leg here now is the positive leg, but I'm going to need to trim those down so that they're not too long. I want them roughly the same length as this one, so let's say I cut them to about there. So I've cut those 2 down just so I know I haven't forgotten and twisted it round. Put the battery in, the top leg here is still the positive leg. So I'm going to bring in my helping hands, and inside my helping hands I'm going to pop in the LED. The top leg here is positive, remember? The top leg's positive. Let's tighten some things up. And I know that my positive wires are the wires here that had the mark on from the Sharpie. So I'm going to, on here now, the top leg here, which is positive, just going to add some solder. I'm going to add some solder to both legs so that they'll solder together. Some solder there. And some solder there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring back the legs, and I need to add the top two. Careful that the wires don't spring apart, but I've got the top two which were positive, I'm going to add to here, and the bottom two which are negative I'm going to add to here. So I'm going to add the bottom two first. This is where you need about 4 hands. Let's add in the bottom ones first. There we go. And I'm now going to add the top ones. Probably doing this backwards really, aren't I? Let's go around this way. And I'm going to add the positive ones to the top. Like so. And if I now test that, careful to keep the legs apart, the LED should flash. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the spacer back between the legs of the LED to keep the positive and the negative legs apart. My soldering's not very great, but it doesn't really matter for this project. And then I'm going to get some heat shrink compound from the roll, so some heat shrink tape from the roll over here. And I'm going to thread that over the top of this, push it through till it's about the right place. That's perfect. And then I'm going to get my heat gun, and I'm just going to warm that up to shrink it down. What that will do is it will shrink the tube around everything. You'll see it shrunk it, as well as burning my fingers. But it's shrunk round, and what that's done is it's kept it all nice and insulated and safe from everything. Check it still works. Now I've got 2 that I've changed to those formats of flashing LEDs. So I'm not going to make you sit through all of them, so I'll just crack on now and do the rest of them and bring you back at the end. And here we are back in the room. I've taken all of the Christmas trees off, and I've replaced each one of the LEDs here now in the string with a flashing LED. So if I turn the light off, let's see if we can see what it looks like. So as a STEM activity, the string of LEDs cost £1 with the batteries, and I guess maybe if you're going to factor in maybe 25p or so for the AA batteries, they're not particularly good ones. The LEDs themselves, are a couple of pennies each. I bought 100, maybe they're 10p an LED, so that's 80p. So maybe in total the whole thing cost about £3. But as an activity to do in a STEM club, it's actually a relatively straightforward thing to do. The things to watch out for are obviously taking the snippers to remove the heat shrink sleeve. There's a potential there of nipping yourself, and obviously we're using a soldering iron, so there is the potential to actually burn yourself with a soldering iron. But as an activity, as something for young people to do as a gift maybe to give to someone at home, or actually just for the sheer joy of doing it ourselves, really quite an interesting and straightforward activity. So thanks for watching. No music over the top of it. Suitably festive, I think. Not bad for a couple of pounds on an hour of work. I really do think it would adorn bookshelves and various things. Quite a nice activity. So again, thanks for watching.